So, Tom, let's jump in with the story of the moment in advance of Wild Card Weekend, and that is the Eisen Mendoza, quarterback of Indiana, doing what he's been doing over the last month plus, if not the entire season. What are you hearing right now amongst your colleagues and also your sources about, is this kid the first overall pick in the upcoming draft?
It's always fascinating, Rich, because my first exposure to it is always when the teams, whether through, various Blesto meetings, places where they share information on the following year's class, I always kind of know, all right, who's the group of guys who are being looked at as first-round picks going into the season. And if you go back, as I did recently, and look at that list going into 2025, a lot of those names that we were talking about have either fallen off because they, decided to go back to school. The Norris Sellers obviously went back to school. There's been other players who have not performed up to that level. The Garrett Nussmeyers have not put themselves in the conversation. But Fernando Mendoza was a really intriguing player who had just transferred into Indiana that everyone was talking about and seeing, all right, what is he going to be able to do in that program? Can Curt Cignetti do with him what he's done with others, including Curtis Rourke last year, get him playing at a really high level? They've got a really good young coaching staff around him there. And as we get toward the end of the season here, again, we're Senior Bowl, we are pre-Combine, Rich, the entire process, all the visits. But sitting here right now on January 2nd, it's hard for me to imagine that Fernando Mendoza is not the number one pick. This is not a really deep quarterback draft, again, for that same reason I just talked about. Some guys, Arch is not going to be coming out in this year's draft. Some of those other names that you heard here, the other ones, obviously, the Oregon quarterback has certainly been in that conversation. Ty Simpson from Alabama, if he chooses to come out, I would think would have a chance to go, certainly in the first round. The kid from Cincinnati is another one that's been talked about a little bit, but his plans are unclear at this point. There's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks right now. There's not a lot of quarterbacks to be had, which is where, if you potentially could see some horse trading up at the top here, if the Raiders end up with the number one pick, it's really hard. Again, pre this process, it's hard for me to imagine the Raiders not standing in and Fernando Mendoza heading from Bloomington to Vegas.
Yeah, and certainly a guy in Las Vegas, Nevada, who will definitely be in time for curfew. That's the sort of individual you want to have as your quarterback, certainly in a town where, things happen. Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.